From the Studio 13 Studios in Splendora, Texas, Hank's Think Tank is brought to you by Quadvest.
Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Hank's Think Tank. We are continuing to talk about water in Montgomery County. And this is a topic I think we're going to continue to cover. It's important and it's multifaceted. There's a lot going on. And so I've got Jim Spigner in here today with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about subsidence. We're going to talk about the recent election that they had and whatever else may come in that direction. But guys, you need to keep an idea of what direction this whole water thing is going in. Because I think eventually what's going to happen to all of us is we're going to end up paying more for water than we do for electricity at one point. And so we're not there yet, but I think we're on the way. And so we've got to be thoughtful about growth, thoughtful about what's going on. And I'm going to quit talking. I'm going to let Jim Spigner come in because he is our guest, and I don't want him just to sit here and listen to me. Jim, welcome aboard. Good to have you, man.
Thanks, Hank. I appreciate it. Always good to be here.
Here you go. How you been?
Better than snuff and not near as dusty.
Here you go.
I'm going to write that one down.
Well, I know that you've got some new information from some studies that have been done. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about what's going on with subsidence. I've got my own ideas on it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're true. And so it's always interesting to, get the real deal and find out where I'm at.
Yeah. Now, that's the beauty of it. We got somebody here who will allow the story to be told.
There you go.
And hear all different viewpoints, as much as sometimes I don't like that, but it's what we need.
That's it.
Really
more information is better than not
more
enough.
information is better. Although we inundate people, and this is, I watch their eyes glaze over when you start talking about all these technical terms. So today I'm going to try to keep it pretty simple.
Okay.
And not because I think the audience really has to have it that simple. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really wanted to come here and talk about is we have been, at Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, we've been working really hard on a subsidence study. And we did phase 1 where we did some background work. What we did is we gathered all the subsidence data and studies we could find and looked at them. So what information do we already have that we don't have to go back and reinvent? So we did that first. And we did that in 19 and 20. And then in 21 and 22, we evaluated all of that data, and then we did a plan forward. What are we going to do now? What does all that data tell us we need to do? Which moved us into phase 3, and we're started into phase 3 now. And phase 3, what we need to do is we need to gather more data, a different kind of data. So everybody in Montgomery County got pretty spun up, and even in Harris County, over this article that University of Houston put out.
And that's the one I read in the Katy newspaper.
Yes, sir.
They had just...
And it was in the Courier, and it was in the Impact News, and just about everybody carried it.
And if I can interject,
Yeah.
I know that Channel 13 is doing a special this evening, tonight, on
Yes.
subsidence.
Yes, and I think they interviewed me, and I don't know that what I said will be on there or not, but
Well, I hope
I
so.
did get a little bit. Yeah, get a chance.
I know that
talk.
Jace was on it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that study caused a lot of people to have heartburn, and I don't have a problem with the study. Now, it wasn't a study like you think of. They went out and studied subsidence. What they did is they studied the information that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they did was they used INSAR data, which is satellite data, and GPS data to determine that the ground is moving. There is some sinking, and we agree with that.
I know, but and I always go back to the same thing in my own mind. The earth is alive. A lot like the forest,
It
a
is.
lot like the ocean, a lot like anything
it
else.
is.
And
The
it's
earth
moving all the time.
it's going
Okay,
to move.
so
I mean,
like-
tectonic plates.
Exactly.
It's
So
going to
like
move.
Hank, there is a whole bunch of systems inside your body that makes you work.
Right.
Well, the earth is that way also. So subsidence is not just a factor of groundwater removal. And there's other things. There's tectonic plates that move. There's
Fault
oil and
lines
gas that
all over
move.
the
There's
place.
natural settling. In other words,
There's
you can
displacement.
you can put
Yeah.
a GPS system out there. You can have a bad drought. The ground dries, and that GPS system's going to move further from the satellite.
Right.
And you're going to get movement. So, but I'm not denying that groundwater removal from certain aquifers does cause compaction, right? So the question becomes, how many aquifers are there? Which ones, when you remove groundwater from them, are more susceptible? In other words, they compact when you take the groundwater out of them. So if you had a real dense sponge and you had it full of water and you took the water out of it, it could still support quite a bit of weight. If you had a less dense sponge and you took the water out of it and set something on it, it would compact. Well, I think we have the same phenomena in the aquifers. They're not all the same makeup.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we don't have in Montgomery County is that we do have, that's common to everybody, is we have 4 aquifers. We have the Chico, the Evangeline, the Burkeville overlay, which is a very dense clay. They have to change drill bits a lot of times to get through it. And then below that, we have the Jasper, and then we have the Catahoula. So everybody has, on the Gulf Coast, has those layers, right? Now, the further...
But those layers aren't exactly parallel either.
They're dipping aquifers.
They dip, yeah, they're dipping aquifers.
Yeah, which is what gives you pressure, right? So
Right.
if you think of water being built up over here and then you punch a hole in an aquifer as you get closer to sea level, if there had never been a well drilled on the Gulf Coast and you had gone down there and punched a hole in that aquifer, water would run right out of the ground.
Right. From the head pressure.
From the head pressure. Now, the thing is that pressure goes away pretty quick in an area because water doesn't move quickly through soil,
Right.
right? And the more confined the aquifer is, probably the more it holds its head pressure. But neither here nor there. The closer to the ocean you get from Montgomery County, so if you went up here to upper Montgomery County where a lot of the outcroppings, where these aquifers come to the surface, if you go up here, then the closer to the ocean you get, the saltier those things get, because it's taken thousands and thousands of years to displace, because we were once covered with salt water
Right.
to displace that salt, right?
Yeah, it's brackish.
So you get brackish water. So down in, the Catahoula, the deepest aquifer, when you get much past Conroe, that's real brackish water in the Catahoula. But you get up at Bentwater or Willis, where I live, it's a lot cleaner water, but it's hot. And it's hotter and hotter and hotter the further you go. So the water comes out of the ground up in Bentwater and Willis at pretty close, not 100, but close. It's hot.
Wow.
So they have to blend it. And then it's also, once again, you have brackish problems. The Jasper down in closer you get to Galveston, the more brackish the Jasper gets. So what Houston and Harris County are pretty much limited to is the Evangeline and the Chico aquifers. And those are shallow aquifers. They mix with each other. And so what we don't, and they have data in Harris and Galveston County on compaction of the Jasper aquifer. We have none up in Montgomery County. And the reason it's not as important to them maybe down there is because they don't really use it much. Most of their water comes out of the Evangeline and the Chico. Up here in Montgomery County, our sweet spot's the Jasper aquifer.
Right.
It's the most prolific. It's,
So let me ask you this: is compaction reversible?
No.
So as
No.
the aquifer gets
No.
replenished, it doesn't reverse the compaction.
No.
Once you're compacted, that's it.
So take a piece of Play-Doh. You know
Okay.
what Play-Doh is? That dough the kids play with?
Oh yeah, smell good.
Squeeze
I
it
used to eat
down.
Yeah.
It doesn't spring back. Take a sponge and squeeze it down and turn it loose. It springs back. Take that
Right.
clay, mash it down. Once you've mashed it, it's mashed.
Okay.
So the bad news is subsidence is not reversible for the most part.
Okay.
You couldn't pump water back in and blow it back
and
up.
blow it back
just
up.
doesn't
So that's what I
work that
thought
way.
may be possible.
No, it's not possible. It's really not possible.
Okay.
But so what we don't have is data up here on where's the compaction occurring, where's the movement occurring, right? So we've got wells in Montgomery County that are in the Chico, the Evangeline, and the Jasper, and the Catahoula Aquifer. The further south you get, the less there is wells in the Jasper and the Catahoula. It's just really not usable water. So they're
Right.
dependent on that. What we know, because of what happened in Brownwood, and we see it in other parts of Harris and Galveston County, is we know that we're pretty sure that the Evangeline and Chico compact. They've taken a lot of groundwater out of the ground, and they've had huge, 10 feet of subsidence in a lot of places in Harris County.
Okay.
So what we don't know, though, is does the Jasper compact either down there or up here? When I say we didn't know, we didn't. As a groundwater district, we had no idea. We looked and looked and looked and looked.
Okay.
But this article that the University of Houston sent out said subsidence is going to get us stop pumping. Now, as you know, anybody knows, groundwater is the best water you can get your hands on.
Right.
It's the cleanest, best tasting, cheapest water. So what there has been is there's been this overriding push for us to cut people back and push them to this really expensive surface water, and we don't even have the infrastructure here to do it. And you can see,
Right. There's a lot of places that
you
don't.
can see how much it's cost to put in what's in now, right? And the way they did it was illegal, so we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. So what we want to know is, what are our options here, realistically?
Well, let me ask you this. What's the mean elevation in Montgomery County above sea level? Just the average.
Probably 170 feet.
Okay, 170 feet.
Or 170.
And how much subsidence have we experienced, let's say, in the past 20 years?
Well, if you took a county average, it's way less than a foot. It's probably like a half a foot. as
So,
a county average.
so with
In
that
Montgomery
being
County.
said,
Yeah.
subsidence doesn't necessarily point to flooding.
No, in fact,
Because
look, subsidence is, if you look at the website of Harris County, there's been a couple of flood studies, and there's also the SJRA's got a website where they have this, and subsidence really doesn't even make the cut.
Right.
So now subsidence, when it comes to coastal flooding, where the seawater encroaches, you better stop that, or
Right.
there's no way to hold the ocean back. But once you get to a certain level, water wants to go to the ocean.
Right.
The problem with flooding we have is the water can't get to the ocean sometimes as fast as it falls on the ground, because we've stopped the water from soaking in by covering it with concrete, and number two, we built all these barriers to the water getting to the ocean.
And we've deforested as well.
And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so if you really want to stop flooding, spending your dollars on subsidence is probably not the highest value I believe you could do. I believe we could do a lot more by opening up channels, cleaning the streams. I mean, maybe even more retention, although I don't think that's the answer the more I look at it. You need retention, but it's not the answer. The answer is you got to get the water
Out.
you got to get it from these neighborhoods to the ocean.
Let it flow.
So what happens is these neighborhoods were not all built at one time so that we could, they're building neighborhoods on top of neighborhoods on top of neighborhoods, and this water, which used to go this way, is going.
Yeah, there's no overall
Trying to-
planning.
There isn't. And
Right.
so what happens is water gets backed up. And when you have a storm like Harvey, which a lot of people freaked out about Harvey, it's a 1 in 500 year. Nothing would have stopped the flooding in Harvey.
Right.
But there are instances where people's homes flood. You get a 6-inch rain in 2 hours, and some people's homes flood. The reason they flood is that water temporarily is blocked from going somewhere else. It's just that simple. And until you remove those blockages, I don't think you're going to stop flooding. But that said, there still is a huge drive to do something about subsidence, because there is a correlation between subsidence and even ground fault movement. And there's a correlation between water removal and ground fault movement. So we know that, right? So look, if removing water from the Chico and the Evangeline in Montgomery County is going to cause a lot of subsidence, it's probably worth trying to do something about, because I'm not sure we're going to get the flood relief we need, and we don't want to exacerbate it. Right? But if removing groundwater from the Jasper and a reasonable amount from the Evangeline and Chico is not going to cause a great amount of subsidence, then why would we force people to a solution that's going to cost? If you think your water's expensive now, put in phase 2, 3, 4, and 5 that was planned for this county before this new board got in place, and you haven't begun to see high water bills yet. You're right about that.
All pay for that.
And let me give you one more little thing that just happened. The North Harris County Water Authority just had an election also.
Okay.
Their 3 new board members are people who were put in office because they're sick of paying the prices, just like we are, for water they're not getting.
Okay.
So they're in the same situation down there we are up here. Harris County's trying to switch to groundwater. They don't have a way to get groundwater, surface water. They don't have a way to get surface water to these people. The people are may never get any surface water. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But they're charging them just like we did in Montgomery County for a plant that they don't receive anything for.
Right.
And so they just had 3 new board members who were voted into office because those people are getting sick of their water bills being high as their mortgages in some cases.
Well, I'm glad they're on there.
Wow.
You know, you finally get to a tipping point.
So I'm just telling you,
up.
people are waking up to the fact that this needs to be approached much more scientifically and much more reasonably than it's been approached.
And not only that, but it needs to be countywide as well.
It does. Well, it
can't just be localized.
Well, it
because
needs
that
to be
won't help.
more than countywide. I think it needs to be GMA wide. I mean, that aquifer does not care where the county line is. It's not like somebody took a big solid plate and drove it in the ground so the water can't move out of the county. Nobody stops that water from moving.
So this would be theoretically a statewide organization then?
Well, I don't know about statewide, but it already is. I mean, the
regional?
Texas Water Development Board.
Yeah.
But we need to do a better job of regional planning.
Okay.
And it's also political that it just, every county wants to do their own
And that's
thing.
sad, yeah.
And I just think that's a wrong way to look at it. I mean, how are you going to develop a desired future condition of an aquifer at a county level?
Right.
No, not going to happen.
I can't figure that one out. I don't know who thought of that, but that doesn't make any sense to me. But at the same time, given what I know about government, I really hate to turn it over to a bigger organization. I think local people getting together and doing this ought to, but the problem is we don't have enough science to make some of these decisions.
And the science is absolutely difficult to come by.
It is. So that's what brings me here today.
Okay.
We launched this subsidence study, and what we want to know is where is it and how much is it that we can pump water and not do significant damage. So our job isn't to stop subsidence. Our job is to manage it if we can.
Right.
So subsidence is going to happen, right? You can't. You're not going to stop it. It's just that's a fact of life. So what we don't want to do, though, is we don't want to do something that's super expensive for the county when it's unnecessary. So,
and we also need a vanishing point as well.
Exactly.
And the reason why I say that is because that's a movable target.
It is. It is.
And so we need to have an actual target.
Yes.
So and
we agree, totally agree.
Yeah, and so where do you put that? I mean, I think that the discussions on target could go on for months.
They could. Look, this whole problem could be solved if I believe that the governor of Texas got the right people in a room. The problem we have here in GMA 14, which is 16 counties, and more specifically Harris, Galveston, and Montgomery County. They're probably the 2 hottest potatoes there are. We're the big gorillas.
Right.
And we got the estuary plant over there that's in the middle of this. If the governor put the right people in a room and said, fix this, it could be fixed tomorrow. I'm convinced of it. I mean, not tomorrow. That's an overstatement, but
I got you. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
We drill for oil at 6,000 feet below the ocean, and we can't fix this problem. I don't buy that. But it's all political, and that's part of the problem. But all that aside, we have a lot of things we're having to work with, but one of the things we're really trying to figure out is how do we get the right science. And so we launched a subsidence study, as I said. We're in phase 3. Phase 3 means that we need to know what do those aquifers what do the clays in those aquifers actually do.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step in that is we're going to get coring samples all the way down through the Jasper. We're going to pull it. That's never been done before.
Okay.
Here. We're going to pull them up. We're going to send them to a lab. So those coring samples, we're going to get them this way, vertically, and we're going to take them horizontally. Now, it's about, let me look here. I don't want to.
How do you get a horizontal core sample?
Well, you go down with and then they have this instrument that goes this way.
Wow. Okay.
And it's not like directional drilling in oil, but it does get you a.
I bet it's based on the same technologies, though.
It's based on the ability to have a hole in that pipe and be able to reach out there and figure out how to do it. So the drilling contractor, to put the hole down and get the cores, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.7 million.
Okay.
To go all the way down and get all those cores that we want and all those.
It doesn't sound bad.
That's for one.
Okay.
And then it's $55,000 to analyze that. So we got a lab, send it off to the lab, they analyze it, they come back and tell us this is how it compacts, here's what's likely to happen, blah, 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 blah. Project management's about $15,000 of that, and data analysis itself is about $8,000 or $10,000 to get it the right. Anyway, long story short, the projected cost is about $1.9 million to do one.
Okay.
Now, we think we need 6 in Montgomery County to tell the story. But the reason we think this first one is so important is we are going to get an idea of whether those clays in the Jasper, because that's the big argument. Harris Galveston went 50 miles south of here, and they took data from a hole punched in the Evangeline and the Chico.
Okay.
They looked at how that compacted. They did some sort of model and extrapolation, and they determined how the Jasper's going to compact up here.
That doesn't work.
That is foolish.
Yeah, that couldn't work.
But it serves a need.
Yeah.
Okay? It serves a need. That's what I mean by political. So
Right.
we're trying to remove the politics out of this, and let's get some data up here. So we need to do these things. So we're going to start with one. And what we really need are 6. We've got them marked out. So
Okay.
when we had the stakeholder meeting Monday night, what we were looking for were 2 things. One, input on what people thought about the plan overall. Is there anything we're missing here? Whatever. And the second thing is help. This is expensive. I mean, we're a $2.5 million a year budget organization. And these things are $2 million a piece. And we
Right.
still have to run the district on that money. So you can see the timeline that we're talking about is to get these put in. Now, in reality, our desired
And you
future
couldn't do a
condition-
bond for something like this?
No, we can't do. We don't have that authority.
Okay.
And so the reality, though, is if you take a step back and you really analyze this dispassionately, our DFC is a 70-year target. So we're
Okay.
trying to prevent about a half a foot of subsidence over the next 70 years.
Okay.
So if it took us 5 years to do this, or even 10 years, the world's not going to end.
Yeah, you'd still be in,
We got a
good
lot.
shape.
We got a lot of time, but politically, there's huge pressure to do something now. This University of Houston article, even though I agree that there is land movement, and I do agree with what they said, we need more data. I don't want to make these big decisions based on the
Hype.
fact.
Yeah,
and
based on hype.
that's where we are. So 2 things came out of that meeting. One thing is we wanted people to look at this and know that we're actually what our goal is. And number 2, we were asking for help. So
Well, how do you plan on funding it then?
so our ask the other night was, can the Woodlands, the township, can Conroe, can Magnolia, can the Howard Hughes Corporation, can the SJRA,
SJRA for sure, yeah.
can Porter Sud, can the Splendora area, can all those people kick in a little money on this? We could do this pretty quick. The actual sinking of the core and doing all. It's a 6 month. We can do it in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
If we had the money, we could do 2 of them pretty quick. We could do one down here in this end of the county and one in the Woodlands, which are the 2 hottest areas, and do them fast. So our ask for them was, can you go back to your various people?
And did you have all these entities in one place?
Everybody kick
Okay.
up. We'll just kick in. We did.
Right.
We had them, that's why we had the stakeholder meeting.
Okay.
Guess who didn't show up?
Who?
Sandwich Center River Authority. They didn't even bother to show up to the meeting, which was aggravating to me because they're.
Well, I
the
think
ones,
it's just because of the tension.
but they're
that's there.
hyping this subsidence deal, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but our ask was, can we get you guys to all pitch in? And so one of the guys from South Montgomery County in the meeting said to me, he said, Jim, he said, how much do you need?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I think we need $4 million. That's what I think we need. I think we need to do 2. I don't think we need to. I mean, we can do 1. It's going to give us some real important data. If we did 2, it'd be much more definitive.
Right.
If we did 6, we got it covered. So he said, well, how much money? How much money do we kick in? I said, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you
what can
how
you
much.
afford?
We're asking. We're not forcing anybody to
Right.
do anything. What we're telling you is we're going to proceed on this. The speed at which these projects proceed depend on the speed at which we can get funding, right? We're not going to raise the taxes on the citizens to get extra funding for this.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to do that.
Are there any government grants that might be available for something like this?
we thought maybe the Texas Water Development Board would be able to help us
I
with
was
that.
thinking about going to
We
the
hear
state
no.
for that, but then they might want to
Well,
control everything.
I'm going to go Monday and talk to the county attorney.
Okay.
I don't know the legality of using the ARP funds that the government gave Montgomery County.
Mm-hmm.
There's $110 million sitting in a pot in the commissioner's court.
Right.
What's ARP?
It was the COVID relief.
Oh,
relief.
COVID
Okay.
relief, yeah.
Yeah. And so there's certain things you can use that money for and certain things you can't.
Mm-hmm.
So the township wanted a bunch of it to help with their incorporation and or something to do with that. And I think the Attorney General said, no, that's not a legal use of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think infrastructure is I'm not sure, but I want to get an opinion on it because
I would think so.
well,
And this is
a
definitely
this is a county problem,
definitely
right?
infrastructure.
So if the commissioners could see taking some money out of that, and really, if you think about it, we could do all of them for. If we got them all probably lined up at the same time, we could probably do them for less than this.
Right.
Somebody would probably cut us a better
Yeah,
deal.
you could get a better deal.
But let's assume we could do them all for $12 million. If everybody kicked in some, and then the county kicked in, I don't know, 8 or 10 million.
And how are locations for the core samples themselves being chosen?
Well, we've put a projected map out, and mainly what we've chosen them by is places where first it's representative.
Okay.
So, you know, if you look at the hype that's coming out of this new Gulf 2023 model, there's some stuff in there about, there's going to be subsidence in Conroe.
Mm-hmm.
The HARC, I don't know if you heard of HARC, but HARC said you ought to locate an extensometer in Conroe first. That's not where the hot spot is. So, we pretty much decided that's not going to happen, especially if we have to do them one at a time.
Right.
But we've got 3 along the southern border of the county and 3 across the middle of the county
Okay.
designated. And the places we designate to do them are places where we have the best GPS and ground radar so we can do correlations.
Okay.
And then the other piece is, where do we have land? Where's there a place where somebody will let us
Right.
do it? So
Yeah.
the one in the Woodlands, you can see who owns all the land around it. We've got a spot located where there's plenty of room and we can drill it. We don't have to buy the land
Okay.
and all that. So there's a lot of different parameters that go into locating it, but we've pretty much got the 6 sites located where we want to do it. We think the Woodlands is first, but we'd love to do one down in Porter or somewhere down here in the southeast part of the county.
And you would use this data to make determinations on how much groundwater can be pumped in the future?
Yes. Well, we would use it to minimize, how much groundwater can be pumped without excessive compaction. So remember, the Jasper is our go-to aquifer. It really is.
Right.
We could, in Montgomery County, more water is going to be pumped out of the aquifer. Now,
See, my problem though is definition. Like you just said, excessive compaction.
yeah.
Where do you discover where excessive compaction
Well, I would
is?
say that Harris Galveston, having 10 feet of compaction or 10 feet of subsidence in lower Harrison, Galveston County over the last 25 or 30 years is excessive.
I would think it is
Okay,
because
I
of their
would-
elevation.
all right.
But we have a
All
higher
right,
elevation
okay, that's
here.
well, water's. If
Right.
we channel the water, subsidence becomes much less of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, can we get cheaper groundwater? If you think about how many people are going to have to pay for this expensive water, and then what does it cost to build a channel and maintain it? It comes down to an economic
Mm-hmm.
trade-off, and I don't know what that is. There are people smart enough to know what that is,
Right.
But so the southern Montgomery County, Harris County border along Montgomery County has experienced about 1.6 or about a foot of subsidence in the last 16 years.
Okay.
Now, is that excessive? That's the question. Is that excessive?
Yeah, where do you draw
Well,
the line?
if you're the Harris Galveston Subsidence District, you've been told to stop subsidence. You don't have to worry about so much about anything else. Just stop subsidence. Now, we don't have that luxury of just worried about one thing. That's all they have.
But has there ever been a determination?
That's where I'm
On-
going. So
okay.
what is reasonable? They've decided that that's unreasonable. Right? Now they can't stop it right now because they don't have the infrastructure to get those people surface water.
Right. Yeah,
Now, there's-
surface water is an issue. It's a problem.
They're
I think it'll always be a
it
problem.
will be. I mean, look, the reality is there's way more water under the ground than there drinkable water than there is on top of the ground.
Right.
That's just a fact. I mean, Montgomery County, and Hank's heard me say this a bunch of times, has 180 million acre feet below it. All the lakes in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana times 3 only have 35 million acre feet of water.
Can you imagine that?
I'm sorry, yeah, 35 million. So we're like, well, my friend called it the Saudi Arabia of water.
Right.
I mean, we got a lot of water down there. Is all of it recoverable? No, it isn't. But if you said let's only recover 1% of it, that's 1.8 million acre feet
You're right.
a year. We're limited right now, trying to limit to 97,000 acre feet, not 1.8 million, 97,000.
Let me ask you this. Let's say we just, in theory, subsidence is an issue. We decided to go deeper and go all the way to Catahoula. And even though it's brackish at this point,
You could treat it.
don't we have the technology to
have the
desalinate it?
Yes, we do. But the question becomes, is that as economical then as surface water? Which one is more economical? Going to the Catahoula and taking the brackish water and then treating it, cooling it and treating it, is that more or less economical? I think we're going to get to a place where we're going to need all of it, to be honest about it.
Right.
But it needs to be done correctly. And the whole problem with this that we're in Montgomery County was that water plant over there was way before its time.
Yeah.
Okay, I look.
Yeah.
It's all right, but here I want to come back to so right now what we're faced with is where can we pump water with the least impact. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to determine what is catastrophic and what is whatever, but how do we manage the impact the best we can?
Well, first you need the data saying what's what.
Well, we do. Okay.
And has it been determined that subsidence is a result only from groundwater?
No,
pumpage?
it's been determined that is not the case.
Okay.
There are other
And so
things
we'd
that
have to
cause
do the
subsidence.
separation on it too to find out
Yes.
is this
Yes.
happening
Yes,
because
yes,
we're
yes.
pumping groundwater, or is it happening because we're pulling
Well-
trees and pouring concrete?
Well,
And adding
all of
weight.
that, all of that probably has something to do with it. I don't think anybody in their right mind. The more overburden you put on something, so get that piece of Play-Doh, set this on top of it. It probably doesn't go anywhere. You crawl up on this table and step on it, it's going to compact,
Yeah.
right?
Why?
That's
Because
just-
I'm so heavy?
that's because you're just quality, dude. So that's just a fact of life. And
Right.
and that clay, the denser that clay is, meaning the more water if it had in it, the less it would compact with the weight, right? So what we need to know, there's a whole bunch of stuff we need to know, but what we're trying to figure out right now is where is the soil, the aquifer, the stratus, more likely to compact when you take the water out of them. That's a tiny piece, but it's an important piece. So,
But there's long term as well.
There
because I believe that all that geology will change in the next 50 years. So you'd have to pull that same core sample again in 50 years,
maybe,
and take a look at it and say, okay,
That's-
now where are
you
we?
might, but in general, unless you have something going on, it won't change that much in 50 years. We're talking long term.
Okay.
But here is the reality of this. We really in Montgomery County don't have the data that tells us what's happening right now.
Yeah, we got to know. We got to know.
And so that's what we're going to do with this study. But as a mitigator, I pulled the study up, research article up, and it is a peer-reviewed. It was reviewed February the 3rd and accepted June 4th and published July of 14 by the Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences, the National Center for Airborne LIDAR Mapping, and all that at the University of Houston. So the University of Houston chartered this study.
Okay.
And it's fairly recent. And the study was done on Harris-Galveston County.
Okay.
And I'm going to read you, so I'm not going to try to read you the whole study. It's like 38 pages long.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
So I'm getting down to the conclusions and the discussion.
Okay.
And I'm going to read a part of it. The investigation includes that the recent subsidence, 93 through 2012, in the Harris-Galveston, Houston-Galveston area is dominated by the compaction of aquifers associated with groundwater withdrawals.
Okay.
All right? The affected aquifers are limited to about 600 meters below the land surface, which would include the Chico and part of or all of the Evangeline aquifer, depending on the site where the subsidence was monitored. So it gets deeper, so you outrun that 600-meter limit the further toward the Gulf you get. The Chico and Evangeline aquifers are the primary sources of municipal groundwater in Harris-Galveston. Remember what I said? The Jasper's too salty for the most part. No measurable compaction was recorded in the Jasper aquifer or its underlying sediments. Deep-seated subsidence is not likely occurring in Harris-Galveston County. And yet, they want us to stop pumping groundwater because they're saying the Jasper is going to cause 30% of the subsidence. This comes out of the Harris-Galveston Subsidence District.
Right.
Are wanting us to regulate our pumping in the Jasper aquifer to a very minimum because they believe 30% of the subsidence, I don't know if they actually believe it, but they say 30% of the subsidence is going to come from the Jasper aquifer, they believe. And this says it's not even subsiding in Harris County.
Well, to
Much
make all
less
that money,
up here.
first you have to scare everybody. That's where I'm coming
Well,
from.
okay, and I look, we can. I have my theories, and you have yours, and we all do. And I think we probably align on the theories about the political aspects of this. But I want to put those aside for a moment, and I want to say what's real.
Right.
What is it that we owe the citizens of Montgomery County? Do we owe them knowing where we can say there is and isn't going to be compaction, and where we can and cannot pump more water? Do we owe them the cheapest practicable use of the aquifers below them that won't damage their property and all of that? And I say the answer to that is yes. And quite frankly, our belief is that when we get these core samples back from the Jasper, we're going to find out exactly this. That subsidence in this county is not going to be a factor of the Jasper aquifer. It's going to be a factor of the Evangeline. Now, once again, I'm saying we think. I want everybody to be clear about that. We think, and let me just tell you where most of the wells in the Woodlands, 19 of them, are pumping directly out of the Evangeline aquifer. And most of the wells down here, the older wells, are pumping out of the Evangeline aquifer. The new wells are all going into the Jasper aquifer. And places like the Woodlands where the SJRA is their surface water provider and their groundwater provider. And the SJRA is asking for a 50% increase in the groundwater pumping. And at the same time saying that they're blending the surface water now, going from a 65-35, 65% groundwater, 35% surface. They're switching to a 50-50 mix. Said they did it in September.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need the extra 1.5 billion gallons? And why can't you get out of the Evangeline and leave the wells pumping in the Jasper if you want to, but get out of the Evangeline?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear that the compaction in Harris-Galveston County is in that aquifer. Why would you think, same aquifer, why would you think it would be different up here? So minimize the pumping in the Evangeline and the Chico and use our go-to aquifer. And then if they want to get on surface water and do it, they can stop the subsidence down there. They can, or slow it down to a point where it's negligible. But the reality is, in this part of the county, there's no way to get surface water down here. You don't. But
right.
But if you want to pump water, where do we pump it? We need to be pumping it probably, depending on what all this shows, out of the Jasper.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to come on here today to let the county know and people know, one, we're studying this. Number two, we need this data, and we need the funding to get it if we're going to get it. And we need it because we need to take the politics out of this and get to where can we get our water and do it in the most economical and safest way possible.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do here. And we're working hard at it, and we're taking a lot of heat. I mean, you can't imagine the amount of pressure there is to stop, to curtail the groundwater pumping so that that plant over there can run at a very high rate.
But that's just for the Woodlands. That's not for
Woodlands
Splendora.
And
it's not
Well, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5 that they would love to do puts water out here.
Surface water.
Surface water.
Because I asked Jace Houston when he was here, and he said it will never get surface water.
Well,
from
the
that
reason
plant.
he said that, well, he tempered that in something he wrote where he said, he might have even said it at the water forum in the Woodlands, but he said until Lone Star regulates the groundwater, i.e. forces people off of groundwater through regulation, they'll never have the funds to put it out here. Now, what does that tell you? That it's not the economically most practical way to do this. But if you artificially do this, then we could pay for it. And that's the same thing that's sort of going on in parts of North Harris County. And those people are angry about it. And they threw out all three board members, existing ones running, got defeated. 3 brand new ones came in. And they wrote in on, they heard me talk on this program. And they signed up to run, and because people begged them to, and they're trying to figure out what do we do down here. They're way further down the pipe than we are.
Right.
Digging themselves out of this hole down there is going to be a much more difficult situation. But in Montgomery County, we're not going to be bullied politically or from a PR perspective. We're just the groundwater district just isn't going to do it.
You got to have the facts. You got to have.
We got to have the facts, and that's what we're trying to get our hands on here.
And see, my problem with surface water to Splendora from Lake Conroe is, well, I have two actually. Number one is economically, I know it's going to kill us. Number two, there's too many points of failure between here and there. We have our own well right here. I could probably see it if I got on my roof.
Well, let me throw one more thing at you. Why in the world did the Woodlands, why did they ever decide to pump water all the way from Lake Conroe to the Woodlands when 7 miles across the border, Harris County has the supply from the Trinity River? Why build a 32-mile pipeline when you could have built a 7-mile one and bought the water from them?
Poor planning.
Well, I don't know.
I've got my theory on that one.
I don't think it had anything to do. I think it was planned exactly the way it occurred for a reason. Why would the San Jacinto River Authority, who owns the water in actually Houston, they owns 2/3 of it, but they have the right to sell it. Why would they allow that water down there to come up here when they don't and take the market away from them?
Right.
look, you can make all kinds of inferences. I can't be in people's heads. I can't say what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just tell you something. I'm 71, headed for 72, and I didn't just fall off the turnip truck.
Right.
And I can look at a situation and say to myself pretty definitively, this stinks. And this stinks.
Mm-hmm.
And but going forward, we're going to do the right thing. We are going to follow the law. At Lone Star. We ran on this new board operates on 3 really strong principles. One is we are going to follow the law.
Okay.
So you mentioned the election,
Mm-hmm.
and the law specifically states the parameters to run for a Lone Star board position. And one of the people running for that board, Mr. Yours, didn't qualify for that.
Okay.
And we got a lot of people pushing, saying, "Oh, can't you do something?" I had a journalist, and I'm not going to say who.
And this is John Yours, and he did get the popular vote, correct?
He did get the popular vote.
Okay.
But I had a journalist call me and say, "Can't y'all work something out and let Mr. Yours serve?"
Work something out.
He said, "Don't you realize how much election fraud and all that there's been, and what people are going to think now that y'all disqualify him?" And I said, "Do you hear what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Do you hear? You're asking me to subvert the law because of the election fraud that's gone on. Do you hear what you're actually saying?"
Right.
I'm not doing that. We're following the law. Look, I hate that happened to him. John Yours is a nice guy. I used to do consulting work for him. I know the guy.
Right.
He's a nice guy. I think he's pretty much a critical thinker. I don't think he's just a minion of somebody at all.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, and to his credit, Mr. Yours recognized that he didn't follow the procedure. And I got to give the guy credit. He stood up and said, "Hey, I'm out, and I'm going to continue my board seat on the mud."
Okay.
But we're going to follow the law. First,
So he had originally had another board position, an elected position.
He was running. Yes, he was running as
Okay.
an elected board member of a mud, and that you just can't do that.
Right. Okay.
And it's not a common provision in every situation. So I understand that, but it's unfortunate that happened, but it did. And so we ran on following the law. We ran on protecting private property rights. You own the water below you. And for the state to come along and tell you can't have that water because they're not going to be able to sell surface water if we let you pump your water, that's against the law. And
Right.
that's the reason that this whole thing got invalidated to start with. That's the reason this new Lone Star board is in place. Is we didn't follow the law and we didn't protect private property rights, civil boarded. And the third thing, transparency and science. We are going to use science, we're going to follow the science, and we're going to be transparent. And those are the 3 things that we think will prevail, will help us prevail.
Yeah.
We hope. I know the good guy doesn't always win, but we're going to wear a white hat here, irrespective of the amount of rain that falls on us.
That's great.
So I just wanted to take this time to be able to come and tell you guys kind of what we're up to.
And I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
So what's the next move as far as obtaining the funding to be able to do this?
Well, we're gonna hold our hand out.
Okay.
We asked people to at the stakeholder meeting to go back to their respective organizations. We're going to send letters now to all of the stakeholders formally asking for participation in this.
Okay.
Resources.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look at things like, is there SWIFT funding available for something like this?
There may be.
We just don't know. But we know now. We now know what it's going to cost us. We're looking that right in the eye, and it's a daunting amount of money. And we also, like I mentioned earlier, there's a possibility maybe that the county would be willing to fork over some money, especially with this ARP stuff that's may or may not be
They
legally.
should be able to at least
I just
assist
don't know.
somehow.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself here.
Okay.
And we know the Commissioner's Court is aware of all of this. They don't like this water situation in Montgomery County. They don't like the turmoil any more than anybody else. We know the state of Texas doesn't like it because they've got some heavy money invested in the bonds for that water plant. And
Right.
nobody likes this situation, and so the more information we can get to clarify what is a path forward, the better off we're going to be. So we're going to be pushing to get people to pony up and help us do this work.
Okay, fantastic.
Because we want a partnership. We'd like to do it. We'd like to keep everybody apprised of it. So I'll be back. Love to come
Great.
back.
Awesome.
As we do more phases of this.
Okay.
Get further into this.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and discussing subsidence and all that. I always find this to be fascinating. It's a good topic.
It is.
Yeah, me too, and I learned a lot.
Well,
Thank you.
I feel like I've been drinking out of a water hose for the last 3 years, to be honest.
Oh, I bet.
A fire hose. It's just there's more of this. We're just scratching the surface. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much I've learned about this over the last year.
Also the data that you're going to get from this is going to help our civic leaders to decide if at one point we do need a flood control district.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole lot more information.
Yeah, and that'll be some good data for them to use.
It will, and I believe that if we can get people to understand, and this is it's a big lift, to understand the perspective that you need to put subsidence in when you're considering flooding.
Mm-hmm.
Where does it fit, actually?
Right.
And right now, because there's been this drumbeat and all this money's involved and all of this, subsidence has taken, I believe, and really I don't want to minimize this on people. Some people are really passionate about this and all.
Oh yeah.
But look, government's got to be dispassionate, right? So I might have to take 6 feet of your property to build a flood control channel.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's what we need to do, and the citizens agree that's what we need to do, then that's what we're going to have to do. We can't fix this with emotion,
right,
and PR.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really believe that we need people to recognize where subsidence really fits in the flooding situation. And to be honest about it, I think you're going to see that being the next drumbeat to regulate groundwater.
Right.
If you don't regulate groundwater, you're going to flood. You're going to flood. You're going to flood. Instead of, guys, if you don't cut some channels and you don't curb development or the way it's being developed,
mm-hmm.
and you don't take into account that when you start stacking neighborhoods on top of each other. So if you go up to the North County, lots of new neighborhoods going, big ones
mm-hmm.
going in up there.
Oh yeah, same thing here.
That's going to speed the water up coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Come into here. It's going to get here quicker now.
Oh yeah.
It's not going to be soaked up anymore up there. And so it's going to be running off that concrete really fast coming down here. So how does it get from here out of here? That's the question. And the reality is stopping the amount of subsidence that they want to stop by doing what they're doing, I'm not sure is going to produce the safety from flooding that we need in this county.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to give us the desired result.
It isn't. And it's going to mean that we have twice the price of water. So the amount of
same problem.
money that we could have put into stopping the flooding, we're going to be spending on water that we didn't need, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we don't need it, but I'm just telling you we need the science to tell us what we need to do here.
Okay.
So anyway.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Hank.
Well, Jim, I appreciate it again. And there you have it, guys. This is, again, just an ever-evolving topic. And it's one that you need to get, because, we all pay a water bill here. Even if you have your own well, you're paying it one way or another. So, just take care and pay attention to what's going on and help when you can. I'm Hank Vatt. For Mark Hogan, this is Hank's Think Tank, and we'll see you in the next one.